What's going on out there, YouTube land? Today we're with the man, the myth, the legend, the world's most dangerous man, Ken Shamrock, UFC Hall of Famer, UFC champion, pancrase creator, Pride champ, Intercontinental WWE champion, Tag Team Champion of the world, the man that really put MMA on the map in a lot of ways, the founder of the Lion's Den. I mean, I could just go on and on and on with his resume right now. The man,
pretty impressive.
These monster biceps right now. You've done a lot, man. Holy cow. Like I said, the man really largely responsible for popularizing MMA and even kind of creating it in a way too. Ken Shamrock, what's going on?
I don't know, man. Well, I guess we're going to find out, though.
Yeah, we're going to find out, exactly. So we're going to work out a little bit today, ask him some stories about, you know, creating all those things we just talked about, all those special moments. And he's got a podcast out right now. I'll drop that in the link below if you guys want to check it out. He's telling more stories from being on the road. Japan, I mean, everywhere. I mean, the guy's got, I guarantee you, he's got stories that you're going to want to hear. Where can you get one of these shirts from?
Well, these actually, I ain't making them yet, but we're starting the Valor Bare Knuckle line, which will have some of these shirts just like this. So pay attention, KenShamrock.com, check it out. They'll be on there soon.
Yeah, we'll drop that link too. All right, let's roll.
God, this is a relaxing thing, man.
It's not a good idea either. Jumper making him jumpy. You gonna get laid out? All right, go ahead and look straight down. All right, Ken. So, rumor is you got stabbed as a kid. Can you confirm or deny?
Yeah. Actually, if you see that right there, where the bump is right there. Actually, this one here.
See these two.
Well, if you see, look at the front there. See where that see how that one? But there was in here where I got stabbed. Somebody tried to stab me. It was going for my neck. Put my arm up. The knife went through there, and all that white stuff looks like cottage cheese started to come out of my arm. Passed out. Ended up in the hospital. And here's the crazy thing. When it happened, I was 10 years old.
Jeez Louise.
Yeah.
So you were fighting at a really early age.
I was living on the street at 10 years old. I was living out of a car.
And so what prompted that? You just had a wild streak to you? You had to get away from home?
Abusive.
All the above?
Abusive home. It was, let's just say it was...
You needed to get out of there?
It was bad.
Okay.
Both my brothers, my biological brothers, I didn't grow up with them because we all got put in placement at a young age. Mm-hmm. And one of them was doing life in prison. Almost killed a guy. And then my other one was a drug enforcer. He used to break people's legs and arms because they owed money. So if I would have stayed in that direction, I hadn't gotten help from Bob Shamrock, who adopted me, I would have probably ended up there or dead. So I was very fortunate that I got in trouble at a very young age, and I was able to get into the Shamrock Boys Home, the group home, which I grew up there and became my home.
So you were fighting at a very young age. Did you just naturally know how to fight? Did somebody teach you? I mean, fighting isn't just a natural thing for most people.
It was from the time that I can ever remember, because even at the age of, and this is not a joke, 6, 7, and 8 years old, I've told this story in some of my motivational speaking, was that we were fighting people, me and my 2 brothers at that age. We were still together and lived in Georgia, and people were breaking into our homes during broad daylight. And we were fighting from the time that I can even remember, 6, 7, and 8 years old, windows being broke, people throwing dirt clods inside our house. And of course, we lived in the ghetto. And we were just basically fighting for every square inch of our being. And it was just the way of life. And then when we moved from Georgia to Napa, California, when I was probably about 8 or 9, the environment was different. The class of people were different. You know, it was more middle class, upper class. But I was different. I talked differently. I walked differently. I acted differently because of kind of the way I was growing up. So I ended up gravitating towards those kind of people, which were more street.
You felt more comfortable around them because that's what you knew.
And
as opposed to the wine glass tipping.
Then running away from home, living out of a car. So I grew up in the streets. And when you do that, there's 2 ways to go. 1, you lay down and die, or 2, you stand up and fight. And so I was the latter, where I stood up and fought, no matter what.
And you just figured it out. You had a natural inclination, natural talent too.
The one thing that I knew from just watching my brothers, which is the only time I ever watched them, was when we were still kids, because we were, at the time I was 10, I was in placement, was that swing first and don't stop.
Got it.
And so that's just what I did, no matter how big they were, no matter what, or like I had done, stab or hit them with baseball bats when they're not looking. I mean, and this is why people have a hard time when they say it. They're just like, no way. But this is from the time I was 10 till I was 13 years old.
Wow.
Is when these things were happening, and I was violent, very violent.
Still is world's most dangerous man.
Right, well, not.
But now he's, now he's a grand.
Now there's no weapons or anything like that.
Just these.
these.
Just
right?
these.
Yeah.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the video, but if you want to support the channel, we got custom shirts over here. So if you want to pick one of these up to support us, got some dad jokes on some of them. Check it out right there. You can go to bunkerbranding.com/Dr. Beau Hightower, and I stuck the description and link below. So we'd appreciate it. You don't have to, but if you want to grab a shirt, that's where you can get one.
But the mindset, mentality, really bode well for stepping into fighting, because when I went into that, people were like, "Dude, you do that, man, that's crazy." But I kept thinking to myself, okay, but before that I was getting jumped, I was getting stabbed, I was getting beat up, and I was going to jail if I was to beat somebody else up. But now I go into this ring and they're gonna pay me?
Sweet.
Like, yeah, of course. So it just fit well for me. I was when they did the UFC and I was in the very first one, a lot of guys were just like, dude, I didn't sign up for this, which we did. But for me, it was just like, I was excited because I mean, I grew up this way. I mean, I literally, like, this was my DNA. And so I was excited to think that we were going to get paid to do stuff like this. But for so long, I was running away from the law because I was doing this stuff.
Right. So when you got to Bob's, you got into football, wrestling, you broke your neck in wrestling and amateur wrestling, is that correct?
Yeah.
In high school?
1 month away from my 18th birthday, I was 17 years old. I qualified for state, was undefeated my senior year, had scholarships for football, wrestling. And you know how everybody says, yeah, you work hard, you do things right, things work out for you. But they don't tell you that there's always obstacles, like these major obstacles that happen to you, right? And and it happened to me at a young age. Most of the time you get older and they start happening. But for me, it happened when I was 17. I did everything right. I built myself up, got off the street, started listening, doing things right, getting good grades, became popular, relevant. And then I go into the wrestling gym and in one move, in one instance, it's all over. I mean, it's literally doctors telling me I'll never play contact sports again. I couldn't move. I mean, they literally came in with this Star Wars board. I think that's what they call it, where they slide this clamp underneath you, clamp you down, they pick you up. I was in the wrestling room where they had to come in and do that, put me in the ambulance. Took me 2.5 hours away to Redding, California, where there was a specialist, a neck specialist, told me I broke my neck, and then told my dad that I would never play contact sports again. For a kid like me, the only reason why I was relevant, why I felt like I had a purpose in life, why I was popular, why I was relevant, why I got good grades, was because I was good at sports. I had to go to class, I had to have good grades in order to get on the field or to be on the wrestling mat, so I got good grades. And I was in special ed in high school because I didn't have any skills. Like, from the time that I was 6, 7, 8 years old, I was on the street. I would go into placements. I probably went to 4 or 5 different group homes. I failed them. So needless to say, I didn't go to school. So when I got into high school, when I actually went to a place where there was structure and that I started to go to school, was a Shamrock Boys Home. I was 13 years old. That was my first experience of really going to school for any long period of time. And therefore I had no education. I couldn't read, I couldn't write, I still can't write. And I couldn't do math. I had no skills. And so I spent my first 3 years in high school catching up. But because I wanted to play sports and I felt like I was relevant at something, important at something, that I wanted to do it. And so therefore I put the effort into getting the grades, because if it wasn't for that, I wouldn't have done it. And then to tell me in that one instance, after accomplishing all that, feeling like I had my life in order, to tell me now that, yeah, you're not going to play sports anymore. I was like, that was one thing that I could not deal with. I didn't know how to deal with it.
You just chose not to accept that eventually, yeah?
I got depressed, and I remember, and this is while I was laying in the hospital, and when they told me this, and they were putting up these x-rays, I remember I'm in this bed, and when they put up the x-rays, I can't see it unless I'm looking through a mirror, even laying down on my back, because I was flat, and they had me strapped down. And the only way I could even watch TV, even on my back, was through mirrors. Or bring the TV above my head. Or when they rolled me over, because they had holes in the bed for using the bathroom and everything else, I had to watch it as I was laying flat down for a period of time. And so they're telling me all this, and I got really depressed. And I remember my father, and was my father at the time, told me, do you believe, and I don't want to get religious, but I'm a Christian, but I remember he told me, he goes, do you truly believe that God would have brought you this far and done all these things to walk away from you now? And I remember thinking to myself, you know what, he's right. This doctor doesn't know me. He doesn't know what I'm capable of doing, or what I'm willing to do to get to where it is I want to go. And I just remember, I just started uplifting myself, thinking to myself, that's right. Nobody can tell me I can't do something. Only I can do that. And so I remember from that point on, I remember telling myself, through even going through the halo, getting out of the hospital, getting it taken off, going through all the rehab and the rehabilitation, I remember thinking to myself, nothing can stop me. Nothing can stop me. I'm the only one that can stop me. And I worked my way through that. 2.5 years later, I'm on the football field. I became an All-American, led the team in tackles. They voted me team captain, and all these things, man, that I accomplished after breaking my neck and being told I was done.
Did you ever send like a program letter or something to the doctor? Just, hey, let's let you know I'm an All-American.
You know, one thing I've always done is I've always been so focused that I never look backwards.
Gotcha.
I never think about that. In fact, the only time I ever I almost forgot until after I ended my career. Nobody knew I broke my neck. I mean, even through my fighting, nobody knew I had broke my neck because because to me it never happened. Like I never
just blocked out.
Thought about it, right? Yeah, I just never thought about it. And then of course after they started doing documentaries on me and started digging into that, it was times where I had to start thinking about those things. Like, oh, I remember that. And my wife told me, because we've done it a couple times, and she had to, because the first time I did it, I got depressed because I went back to all of that, all the abuse, the beatings, the things as a 5-year-old kid being left with people that didn't have the best interest, they had their own interests, and they abused kids, right? And we were left in these areas that were just bad, and I had to go back there to tell these stories. And I got started to recluse into my bedroom. I started to isolate a little bit. My wife said, "Hey, you're regressing," and she saw it, and I didn't see it. So anytime now that we do these documentaries where they're going to tell my life story and get deep into that, she always reminds me, remember, don't isolate yourself, because it literally takes me to some dark times. And so those were tough, because like I said, I never because of my character, my personality, I never let the past affect me. I'm always moving forward. I'm always focused on the next thing. And even when I'm successful, even with championship belts and everywhere I went, I reached the top. When I've done it, it was on to the next thing. I never sat in the moment and enjoyed those things. I always felt like there was something else I needed to do. There was the next fight. There was the next this. There was the next that. And I would celebrate that for the night or a day, and then it was on to the next thing. And I never sat on that stuff. So good, bad, or indifferent, I've never really took the time to enjoy stuff either.
After all that stuff, you play football, you start getting into wrestling. You were wrestling kind of an NWA circuit on the East Coast. Was that before you went to Japan and started doing? Because I know you in the early 90s you went back and forth quite a bit. You were doing pro wrestling. Did you grow up watching pro wrestling? Like, what got you into pro wrestling?
No, actually, my dad did. He was big time into pro wrestling. Me, I mean, I'd watch it at times, but as I got older, out of high school, it just seemed silly to me, right? I just like, I was on to more like football and boxing and, tough mans and all these other things, just more aggressiveness, wrestling, amateur wrestling.
Right.
So it kind of left that behind, but my dad was always following it. And then it got to a point to where after, I got into MMA, the pancreas, I become successful at it. But there was really a time where I wasn't doing anything, and my dad said, why don't you try pro wrestling? And I was like, and that was early on before I became famous. I already done some stuff with football. I did well in football.
And you kind of were one of the founders of Pancrase, right?
Yeah, but this was before Pancrase.
Okay.
This was way before Pancrase. This was when I had gotten done with college football. I played at Shasta College. I did well there after breaking my neck.
Yeah.
I had a chance to play with the Chargers, so there was a lot of things weighing at that time of what I was going to do. And I remember when I went in San Diego for the Chargers to play there, they wanted to move me to fullback.
Okay.
And I was a defensive guy. I just didn't want to be the guy getting hit. I want to do the hitting.
Right.
But I also had a different mindset too after playing college ball, after breaking my neck. Even though I did well, I thought to myself, I was more of this individual guy where it was like I didn't need a team to help me be successful or to lead me to being successful. So I started thinking more along the lines of what could I do that I'd have the best chance of going where I want to go and being what I want to be, which is I wanted to be the best at whatever it was. So I thought to myself, if I was going to do pro wrestling, I could do that for a little while and then see what was going to happen because I had no other choices. Now I could maybe try out with the Chargers, but around the same time all that was happening, I ended up getting an opportunity to go to Mooresville, North Carolina and work with Nelson Royal and Gene Anderson in a pro wrestling organization. So I remember I said, I'm going to go try that.
Okay.
And so I went down there, did well first year, ended up getting the strap, got a chance to go down to Japan with Baba's group, worked out there for 6 weeks, did a tour up there, came back home, circuited a little bit more in the Carolinas. Then I had an opportunity to do this thing called the UWF, was really the very first worked shoot or shoot style pro wrestling.
Right, just real stiff.
Real stiff, but the ending's predetermined, but you're still getting kicked, you're still getting punched, you're getting submission holds put on you, and rope escapes. It's very aggressive.
Right.
And so I did that, and my very first time there, immediately I became the famous guy, like with just one fight, everybody was like chanting my name after it was over. And to me, I was just doing what I naturally do without going in and knocking somebody out, but having the same aggressions as a fighter. So, but immediately I ended up becoming popular. That organization closed down. Two matches in, and I was like, well, so much for that. Didn't know what to do. So then this other thing come up, which is Fujiwara Gumi, and they asked me to join that, and I said, sure. We go there. Not happy with it because that became a lot softer. It seemed like they were going more towards pro wrestling with that same style, but it was a lot softer. And Funaki came to me and Suzuki came to me and go, dude, we're starting our own league, but we're going to go shoot. It's going to be real. And I kind of got a big old smile. I was like,
sweet.
Sign me up, brother. I'm in.
And that's where Pancrase kind of
That's where Pancrase started. We did our first event. I remember fighting Funaki.
Which is really, like I said, the first, first MMA.
That started it all.
Yeah.
That's the
creation
beginning
of MMA.
Everything we see today, UFC, Pride, all of it. That was it. That was the beginning of it. And Funaki was the favorite.
Right.
Because he was the guy that everybody knew in the gym that was beating everybody, except for they didn't know my true abilities. Right? And because I came from the street, because I had no fear, stuff like that. So I said I would do that, and they put me up against him. And I kind of knew the deal. Like, they were going to build me at the same time, but he was going to get the strap. But this was a shoot. So there's no way they could predetermine that. And so when we had our fight, I think that's when everybody realized who I was and what I was capable of doing.
Right. Yeah. That's awesome. Let me see your range of motion here. Let me see both arms there. They're a little tight. Yeah. Bring it back down. So he's going to do these the needles here on your deltoid and your lat. So after pancreas, so is that about when you started the Lions then? Around that time?
Yep.
Or was that before you?
No.
Or was that before UFC 1?
Pancreas was the very first, because I was trying to find people to train with here in the States. And at that time, this was in 89, 90,
right.
91. I think Pancreas actually originally started in 93. So I started training in this around that time, but not in a shoot. Pancreas came out, I believe, in 89, 90.
Right.
UFC came out in 93. So that whole time between 90 and 93, I'm trying to find places to train at, because when I come back here, I have to find a place to train so I can go back to Japan and be prepared to fight.
Right.
I remember going into these places, and I would go to boxers and say, hey, come into my gym, which I hadn't started Lions Den yet. It was in the gym I opened up. Come on in, man. You punch at me, I'm going to try to shoot, take you down. You're like, no, I ain't doing that. I was like, no, it's just training. He goes, no. Same thing the other way, where I'd kind of punch people and tells me, shoot on me, I want to punch you. Like, no. Nobody ever heard of this. They thought it was crazy. And so that's when I decided, you know what, I'm going to have to just start training guys. And I remember showing tapes and telling people, hey, if you want to come in and train with me, I can train you, and show them what I was doing over in Japan. And a couple guys got excited. Oh, I want to do that. So I started building slowly like that. And then I had about probably 4 guys. And then somebody said, hey, you ought to open a gym and call it something, which we were already in a gym. We just didn't to the public. And I was like, okay. And I remember watching The Animal Kingdom. And it was a lion, so about the lions and how they were king of the jungle, how they attacked their prey. And I was like,
that's a good name.
I'm gonna name it that, because being king of the jungle and the way that they used to pull them down and bite their neck and circle them up as a pack, it just felt like, okay, the king of the jungle sounds good.
Yeah.
So that's kind of how I came up with, is watching these animals and the lions and how they hunted and attacked. So that's kind of how I came up with that.
That's like the very first super gym. So all these MMA gyms you guys see now, that all comes from, starts with the Lions Den and goes from there, which is pretty awesome. So from there, you know, your pancreas, and then you have, you know, your rivalry with Boss and Hoist, obviously. So, you know, Ken's been involved with 3 or 4 of the most important rivalries the sport's ever had, you know, between the shoot wrestling and BJJ, and then, you know, the feuds you had with Tito. And so, you know, you're also known for, you know, after getting your UFC championship, bringing leg locks, because you finished a lot of guys with leg locks, heel hooks, you know. When you signed with WWF, you brought in the tap, and you brought in the leg locks, and nobody's ever seen that before in pro wrestling. So that's another very first. What prompted the switch from, you know, the MMA stuff? It come off pay-per-view is what I had heard, that UFC wasn't. I know they were fighting the legal battles. Is that what prompted you to sign with WWF?
Well, it was they were dying. They
UFC.
were constantly, UFC was dying. Right. They were constantly in court. We went to a couple places where they were battling all the way up until we actually had the event.
Human cockfighting and all this kind of stuff.
Well, and even at one time, we were in North Carolina, I believe it was, and all legal, sanctioned, everyone's supposed to go there. They shut it down. And then we had to take the ring, or the cage, all the fighters, all the corners, doctors, everyone, pack them in a plane, fly to Dothan, Alabama, and set that cage up overnight and have the show the next day, because they wouldn't let them do it, even though they had already signed agreements. They already said they could do it, but they came in, some politician came in trying to get his name in the paper and ended up blocking it. And so they were fighting this constantly the whole time, and they were spending hundreds and thousands of dollars trying to fight this legal battle, and it was just draining them of being able to pay guys like myself to be able to stay and fight. And I had a family to support. I had gyms, I had fighters' houses, I had all this stuff that I had built that I needed to make a certain amount of money. And if I couldn't do that, I was told myself, my family came first. Sure. I can't support my family doing what I love doing. I'll go do something that I have to support my family. Right. And so that's what was happening. I wasn't able to support my family the way that we were accustomed to at that time. So I started looking elsewhere. I remember having a conversation with Bob Meyerowitz and saying, dude, I can't do it if you guys can't pay me what you said you were going to pay me. And it was a good conversation. There was no problem there. Sure. So that's where me getting into pro wrestling happened. That was more out of an opportunity that presented itself because another opportunity was taken away.
Right.
And so I didn't want to stop doing what I was doing, but there was nowhere else to go. And so the only way I could really keep doing what I was doing, even if it was in entertainment style, was in pro wrestling. And so that's why I went there, was to be able to kind of bring and showcase the things that I was doing in Japan and the United States into the pro wrestling arena.
And it's what's interesting too is not only did you sort of start MMA and all that kind of stuff, I think your foray back into the WWF and then back into MMA again really created the fan base that ended up becoming the UFC. Because I know me being one of those people, you know, having you come in, the pop you got and the guest referee match and you know, taking down Brett and all those kind of things in the height of the Attitude Era, the world's most dangerous man, and then everybody's like, no, this guy can really fight. Like, it's not, you know, no, he can really, really fight. So we start looking around, we're like, let's find the tapes of him in the UFC or, you know, or Pancrase, and we're like, whoa, this guy's wild.
It definitely put the mixed martial arts on the map, more in mainstream audiences, for sure.
Because you were already a star in the combat sports sphere, and that's what allowed you to get that pop come in and right away in WWF. But obviously Attitude, the Monday Night Wars, the amount of viewership that wrestling had at that time, you know, for them to be like, oh, I want to watch this guy really go fight now. And we're like, that's kind of what we want to see, is the stylistic clash, but it to be real.
Right, yeah.
So I know you had a really stiff match with Vader, you know.
Yeah, but see, I didn't know any different. I thought that was normal.
Right,
like,
that's kind of how you did stuff in Japan anyway, right?
I was like, and then everybody's like, dude, that was great, man. Are you guys okay? And I'm like, and they're like, man, are you okay? And I'm looking at them going, they're like, they said he tried to knock me out. And I was like, no, he didn't. I was like, what are you talking about? And it was literally like when he swung and when I was in the thing and he swung and hit me, everybody said that was a stiff shot. And I'm like
I thought way stiffer than that.
Okay.
Oh, sweet. Awesome.
I like it. You guys think it was, but to me it was normal. I didn't think anything of it. But and then I watched back, and of course then as I got more experience into pro wrestling, I could see where they were like, dude, that was. And then I remember Bret came to me, Bret Hart, after I had the match with Vader, and he goes, man, that was really a good match, stiff but good match. And he says, you're not going to be able to have all your matches like that.
Right.
And I was like, huh? And then I understood after that. It was like, okay, that was why they brought Vader in, so that I could go in there and people could see who I was. Right. Make a good impression. And then come in and say, okay, we got to back this up about 10 notches. I was like, okay.
That's actually brilliant. You know, that's brilliant programming.
Yeah, because anybody else, I'm not sure it would have been a good match. They would have. I don't know how anybody would do that, but I'm glad it was that, because I don't think I would have shined if I wasn't able to just kind of let go a little bit. Right. But once I did that, at least I had something to gauge it off of. Like, okay, I see where that was, and now I know where I have to back it up to in order to still make it look good and still be me. Right.
And then so from there, you know, you get the Intercontinental belts, and then they create these Lions Den matches, which is pretty cool. That's unique. And, you know, you were popping at the same time that, you know, Brett was moving out after the screw job, and you know, it was kind of you and Rock and Stone Cold. Right. You know, 3 or 4 of you guys were really just to that upper echelon. You know, going into the corporation storylines and all that kind of stuff. What was that like? You know, kind of coming up with those guys and seeing the stars, you know, really elevating the, you know, the ratings you guys were getting on Monday nights. What was that like? Was that pretty crazy? Being in crowds that were, I don't know. I know Japan crowds are a lot quieter. What was the crowd pop like when?
It was different because it wasn't like we walked right into this, right? Remember in the beginning when I came into this, there was a WCW was just taking off. Yeah. Like Hogan took the NWO and Nash and Hall and all those guys. So they were just really moving up, and WWF was kind of behind them, and they were trying to catch them all the time, especially when I first came in. Right. So it wasn't like when we first jumped into it, it was hot. It wasn't. It was the opposite of that. And Vince was looking for that next thing to be able to put them where they needed to be. Right. And I truly believe, and I'm not just tooting my own horn, but I truly believe fans were looking, because MMA was so popular, and people were loving it, that they needed that kind of aggressiveness and that edgy type of pro wrestling.
Right.
Because you're not going to catch Hulk Hogan and Nash and Hall with all the popularity they had. You need to come in with something different.
Right.
And so I think Vince was brilliant when he brought me in.
Yeah.
He put Stone Cold over as this, I don't care, F you, my boss, and this and that. Using me, coming from that badass attitude and era of fighting,
kind of enforcer,
and mixing it in with these guys that knew how to work, like Bret Hart, like Stone Cold, like Shawn Michaels, like all these guys, and mixing it in with the real deal really put it over the edge. I think the Attitude Era, in my opinion, was probably one of the best times ever in pro wrestling, and I think it had a lot to do with being able to mix in the realism with the entertainment.
Right. And so, like, what people don't realize is when we say the Attitude Era, it almost exactly coincides with your time there.
That's right. That's it.
to the year.
It is, because if you look at what what's his name from the WCW, bald-headed guy? Goldberg. His whole character is based off MMA.
Yeah.
And he popped over the top.
Big time.
Stone Cold Steve Austin, same kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Mixing in me with them. Bret Hart mixing me in with them.
Yeah.
It literally got people to buy in that this was real. And then changing the way that people were wrestling too. Remember the match I had with Vader, where it was very aggressive, and then me going in there and not changing, just maybe up on the physical part of it a little bit, but same kind of attitude, same time aggressiveness. People are now watching wrestling and going, was that real?
Yeah.
I mean, they could literally now be proud of it, not be like watching it from the closet and say, I don't watch pro wrestling. Now they're jumping out of the closet saying, I watch wrestling because it was cool.
Yeah. Well, and the bumps that you would take and Mick would take too. I remember there was a moment where like Rock hits you with the chair and you're like, come on, right? Where before guys wouldn't take bumps like that, you know?
It was too, is my hair perfect? Do I have the makeup on right? Did my bump look good? You know, just too feminine.
Got it.
That Attitude Era was like just tough guys,
get crazy,
right?
Yeah.
And you get in there and you just mix it up and you go do it. Take rough bumps, take hard shots.
Give hard shots.
Yeah, and it showed.
Send some receipts.
Yeah, it showed, and fans bought into it.
Big time. So what prompted you to then leave WWF? I know you went back to fighting, but what was the mindset? Where you just wanted to fight more, or?
I left because I didn't leave because I wanted to leave. I left because I couldn't make the money I needed to support the family.
Got it.
The business I built.
So MMA was picking back up in income again.
It started to pop again. It started to move up because I went into pro wrestling, people started to go, hey, where did he come from?
I agree.
And so people were starting to pay attention to MMA, and it started to climb again. And once it did that, I hadn't finished yet. I still, like I said, I still even to this day love the competition, love the training. I love all of that. I know I can't do it, but I still love it. And at that time, I could still do it, even though maybe not at a high level, but I could still do it.
Right.
And so I wasn't done, and I wanted to make sure when I left, what I loved doing and really loved doing, it had to be on my terms, not anybody else's, because I'd always second guess myself.
Right.
And so that's why I went back, was because I needed to know I was done.
Okay. Makes sense.
Yeah.
And so then, you have probably like I said, the most important, I would say the most important, of course, is Hoist, because, you guys and your styles and everything. But for the business, again, you're the very first Hall of Famer, I think, in the UFC, right?
Yes.
Yeah. So, the rivalry and the trash talk and the stuff you had, and obviously you had learned some of that from wrestling too, coming back over with Tito, I think that, that really pushed the UFC into a place where it was sustainable.
Yeah, there's 100 fights you can watch, right?
Sure.
But what people could be drawn to is character.
Right.
Right? And so you look at 10 fighters.
Which is why those two fields work so well together, right?
Exactly. And that's why I think that all along, even though I wasn't built as a pro wrestler, even when I'm fighting, it's just the way I've always been. Even in street fights, I was always a guy that would just get up and start going. And showed a lot of character, a lot of toughness, because I never wanted to lose.
Right.
I always wanted to be the best. And I also cared what people thought.
Sure.
Even when I was in the street fighting, whatever, I wouldn't bully people. I didn't want people to look at me like I was a bully or like that I was an asshole, right? I cared about that stuff. Right. And so even when I get into a fight, it had to be for the right reasons. And so even when I got into entertainment, same kind of thing, where it's like it mattered to me what fans thought.
Right.
And so when I was in the ring fighting, I didn't want to be bored. I didn't want people to say my fights. But man, and so I would train hard just to make sure that people enjoyed what I was doing.
That's awesome. So when was your last MMA fight? Was 2 years ago, 3 years ago?
No, 2000, is it 20 now? So it was 15, 16, something like that.
And you still pick up some wrestling gigs here and there, yeah?
Got this weekend, yeah.
This weekend?
Junior, Bulldog, his son.
Harrison Jr., yeah.
Yeah, we're gonna.
Bulldog son?
Yeah, and I trained him when he was 10 years old.
Wow.
Showed him some ankle locks when I was up to training in Calgary. So it's going to be fun to go in there and play that back because they're going to use that. Training him and so it's going to be it's going to be fun.
Still active, still working out, obviously. Yeah. So we played this game on the show. It's like you pick your Mount Rushmore, except for we extend it because there's only 4 faces, so it's a running joke. We have 5 faces. So excluding yourself, if you take yourself off, 5 faces on Mount Rushmore. Who's on yours for MMA?
And again, I hope this doesn't insult anybody, but I don't do that. Because for me, I know how hard it is for people to get to a position to where they've been inducted into the Hall of Fame.
Sure.
And most of them have done a lot to build the UFC where it is at in their own moments. And it's just, even when you see, because I'm a big NFL fan, I see guys trying to compare guys who did it in the 50s and 60s. And they're not wearing helmets, the rules were different, more games, and there's an Astro by their name. So to me, it's not that way. I think it's about appreciating everybody in their own generation time of what they did for that sport and how they were able to build it. Because it's almost like slighting people.
Sure.
Like myself, when I went back into the earlier days of the UFC, what we did, Hoist Gracie, myself, and many other people, what we did was build something that people are making hundreds and millions of dollars right now.
Right.
If we didn't do that, these guys wouldn't have those reputations, wouldn't be able to have the money that they're having.
Sure.
So a lot of guys that did those things that are not getting recognized because it was so far back and it was the beginning, they're not getting that true recognition.
Right.
I had more submissions than anyone, including Hoist Gracie, in my career.
Right.
But it never gets recognized, right? Because I fought in Japan.
Sure.
But does that matter? I mean, like, it's still mixed martial arts.
Right.
It's still the real deal. So it's like it's always clouded. So to me, I think it's more about, in your generation, who you appreciated, who was there for you, and who you followed, who was your idol.
Sure.
So it's just, to me, I don't like pointing guys out. And there's just so many good ones. I mean, I could.
So who are some people do you think had like really innovative styles that have contributed to the sports?
Well, and again, it bothers me because there's no recognition there. But I truly believe Maurice Smith was the first innovator of striking, kickboxing, a true world champion, coming into a mixed martial arts organization where it was tough to win as a striker and beat a phenomenal, in fact, he's a Hall of Famer in Mark Coleman.
Right.
To me, those are the things that you see that just don't get recognized enough, of guys that changed the sport.
Sure.
Because it forced grapplers to have to learn striking. So Maurice is one of them. I think Tito was another one. I think Tito was a guy that made that turn into the world we're in now. The respect of the sport, coming in suits. He just changed a lot of things that we do in that world. So, and you just can go on and on. You look at my brother who came in there, he beat Tito early on.
Right.
He doesn't get recognition.
Six UFC titles, right?
Yeah, I mean, just there's no recognition, right? Which is another thing that it's frustrating.
And some of that's frustrating because, obviously the ownership right now, the Zuffa, we talk about the Zuffa era, and it's sort of, exclusive.
Yeah, they try to block out the beginning, right?
Yeah, which, I also disagree with.
Look at Hoist Gracie. I mean, Hoist Gracie was the guy that said, you know what? Just because you're smaller than somebody doesn't mean you can't beat them. Right. And it just completely changed the world, right? So for me, those things to me in the early ons are the ones that are important to me because it does give us what we have today.
Right, makes sense. Who are some wrestlers that you enjoyed either working with or you felt like made a big impact on like your mic skills or, because obviously you went over there, you took grappling skills, fighting skills, but you picked up some of the mic skills from some of those guys too, right?
No.
You don't think so?
No, I don't. I mean, everything that I do is more of an emotional and experience that I've experienced. That's why I was never good in pro wrestling, of just coming off the mic and creating character, cutting a promo. It's horrible.
Yeah.
Because it had to be real.
Right.
And so for me, everything I do is just emotional and real to me.
Right.
So doesn't mean that I can't leave it and still be friends with people, because I can, but in the moment it's real. So it's stuff that I feed off and things that happen that I focus on and I pick at and I make it a problem.
Okay.
Because it sells tickets, but it's still real.
So was anybody that you were really close with over at WWF? Brett? You said you were close with Brett?
Yeah,
you still talk to anybody from over there?
Brett, I don't have, and I think this is where I get myself in trouble with people that were close to me during those times, is that I don't stay connected.
Because you're always moving forward, you said. Leave the past and you're moving. What's the next thing? What's the next thing?
Yeah, like guys like Guy Mesger, Trey Tellep, all those guys, they get mad at me because I'm not involved with them. I don't call them, and it's not on purpose.
Right.
I still love those guys. It's always going to be a part of my history.
Guy, another UFC champion you trained.
I'm always moving somewhere else. The only thing that ever stays with me, close to me, my wife, my kids, that's it.
Right.
Those in my shuttle, and that's what moves with me. Everything else, they have to figure it out on their own.
Right.
You know, I don't take them with me.
Sure.
And I'm not, I know it sounds bad, but I should be better at it, but I just don't stay connected.
Trust me, I get it. It's not that easy.
Yeah.
You know, especially as many places you've been all over the country and how many people you've made an impact on. You know, it's a lot of people to keep up with, man.
Yeah, and I just think that we're all...
Let's turn your head to the left all the way.
We're all trying to figure a direction or a way.
A little further. A little more. A little more.
That's it.
Okay, let's go to the right a little.
That's it right there.
A little further. Yeah, a little further. Perfect. Okay, tap the center. And look up to the ceiling. Keep looking up. Keep looking up. Good. So your favorite rivals in MMA, if you got to put those on a list.
Don't have them.
Don't have them?
Because each and every one of them were very difficult in their own way. Like Hoist, he wasn't dangerous to me.
Right.
But, oh man, he was very, very sneaky.
Had you grappled in the gi much before that?
Never.
Like,
Never.
This guy's choking me with his clothes?
I didn't know. I was like, I literally, like, you can't do that.
This guy's choking me? What the hell?
You can't bring a rope into the ring. What are you doing?
What the shit is this?
It's like, I guess you can.
I guess you can. Who knew?
Right. I was like, well, thank you very much.
And that's one thing about, no internet, all that kind of stuff. You show up and you're like, well, who's this guy? I've just heard a few things, but that's about it, right? You didn't...
I literally, when I walked in, because I was a champion in Japan, I saw him at the conference we were at, and I remember looking at it. He was wearing his gi, and I was like, this guy walking around in his pajamas, man. And then 24 hours later, I'm looking up. I just got choked by this guy's pajamas. It's like, I got to get me some of those.
I got to get some of those choke pajamas here.
It's like Superman's cape.
They keep you warm and you can choke people if you need to.
Right.
Lapel choke. So like, what the hell is this?
Talk about a humble experience.
Hey guys, sorry to interrupt the video that you're watching, but if you're interested in pursuing this kind of work as a career, you too can become a doctor of neuropathy. Go to sunm.edu. I put the link in the description below. You can check it out.
Smallest guy. Me and him were the smallest guys. I think I weighed 195 pounds and he weighed 185, 187. We were the two smallest guys there. And it goes to show you, and it literally did open the eyes to people, because the only two that grappled was myself and Hoist.
Right. You guys kind of put it on everybody.
And then even after, when I was able to get Hoist, the second time we fought, I beat the hell out of him. But it opened the eyes to the world that there's more to being small or being big.
Right.
It didn't decide anything.
Right. And then the fights with Boss, obviously.
Yeah. Yeah, those were not seen by a lot of people, but I think that now as people start to study it and they start to look into it, they realize that those fights were truly a lot harder than going into these more dangerous UFC, but more technical in the Pancras organization. You had to be really good.
Right.
Because you couldn't get bailed out by being a striker, take a guy down and just pound on him. This guy can get a rope escape, right? and you couldn't punch him when you were on the ground. So it literally was striking, standing up, and when you hit the ground, it was all ground.
Right.
So you had to be good at both.
Yeah, and people really hadn't seen leg locks before either, I don't think. And so, you know, you're like, I'm fine. Oh, my knee exploded. I guess I'm not fine.
Yeah, it's like, well, what is that? Yeah, snap.
Oh, I think I'm okay. Nope, I'm not.
Up. It's like, yeah, I guess it's effective.
Yeah. It's not like an armbar where it's like, oh, I should probably tap out. It's like, no, I think I'm good.
Snap, right?
Oh.
You go to spin one way.
Well.
Like, yeah, my ankle's not working.
Okay, I guess this match is over.
It's like, yeah, it's effective.
Definitely effective.
You see this right here? Do you remember the fight I had with Brian Johnston, where I ended up having to back out of the tournament because I broke my hand?
Mm-hmm. Got a souvenir?
I got a 6th knuckle.
There you go. Wow. Now, did that have a plate in that?
No, the screw.
Screw? Okay. Yeah. Break your hand, you're screwed, you know?
Yeah, definitely, literally.
So, Ken, I want to know, have you ever got any residuals from the Shamrock Shake from McDonald's?
No. I think that term has been around a lot longer than I've been born.
I don't know, man. I remember being like, you know what? The Shamrocks, they must have that shake. Let's go.
All right.
A couple bucks, it's green, you know. I figured some residuals are coming your way.
Well,
no relation to the Shamrock Shake.
Good promotion, though. I like it. Man. I don't have to pay for that either. They promote me without.
Yeah, they promote it everywhere. Shamrock. Yeah, absolutely. All right, let's stand up, shake that out. How's the neck going there? Feeling looser?
Yeah.
Sweet. Survive. Make sure you guys check out kenshamrock.com. It's got a bunch of stuff coming on, starting in Bare Knuckle League, you said?
Yep, Valor Bare Knuckle. It's valorbk.com. Check it out, man. We got some fights coming up. We've got a watch party coming up January 7th, I believe it is. So, yeah, check out the newsletter. You can go to valorbk.com to check all that stuff out. So, appreciate you guys.
Check it out. Appreciate you having us.
Thank you.
Yes, sir. It was an honor.
Thank
We'll
you.
see you guys on the next one.